He is from Zubair Hudawi, registrar. His paper will be Education and Empowerment Through Education, Lessons from Side NURSI for Muslims in India.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thanks to everybody. Assalamu alaikum. Here I have a paper on education and empowerment through education. Lessons from Side NURSI for Muslims in India. Education is a key tool that ensure empowerment, development, capacity building as well as upward mobility of any community. Studies have shed light on the correlation between social backwardness and absence of proper education. A number of researchers have proved this correlation rate. In the case of Indian Muslims, Sachar Committee report was the latest signature that signified the backwardness of Indian Muslims in education and consequently in the entire spheres of social life. One can count several reasons for the educational backwardness of the Indian Muslims in India, from the community's casual indifference or strong opposition to send their children for education, to apathy and neglect or biased treatment of those in the power. My argument in this paper is that there is a big need in the Muslim community to have a clear notion and perception on what is education and what all kind of education they can aspire to, and how to better utilize the social and non-religious systems of education in front of them for their better future here and hereafter. My paper will make attempt to fill that conceptual void and theoretical framework in terms of education from the teachings of Turkish intellectual and Quran commentator Said NURSI, who has rightly countered ignorance, friction and poverty as enemies of Islam and Muslims, and education, hard work and consensus as its solution. Islam is the second most practiced religion in India with around 15% of the country's population. Muslims in India form the world's third largest Muslim community after Indonesia and Pakistan, and the world's largest Muslim minority population. India has a vibrant Muslim culture. They live under a constitutional democracy that guarantees protection of the fundamental rights of equality before the law, freedom to press, practice and propagate religion, and non-discrimination by the state against any citizen on the ground of religion. It is a fact that in terms of profession, practice, public discourse and propagation of religion, Indian Muslims, despite all the odds that we have faced, enjoy greater freedom compared to many of the Islamic, Muslim or non-Muslim states around the world. Islam in India unfolds a bewildering diversity of Muslim communities located in multiple streams of thought. Their histories, social habits, cultural traits and occupational patterns vary from class to class and region to region. They speak numerous dialects and languages and observe wide-ranging regional customs and local rites. Their economic profile varies. There are many comfortably placed traders, business persons, merchants, professionals, politicians, celebrities and industrialists from them, but the vast majority of Muslims are impoverished peasants and landless laborers or industrial proletariat. However, after the 60 years of independence, Indian Muslims as a whole paint a very grim picture of their condition and are mired with countless problems and stuck with the prospects of a bleak future. Various studies have pointed out their social, economic, political and educational backwardness. Of late I mentioned the Sachar Committee report. The report showed that though there is a considerable variation in conditions of Muslims across the states, the community exhibits deficits and deprivation in practically all dimensions of development. The loyalty of Muslims is always, so there are different kind of problems they are facing. The legacy of partition is still alive in the mental psyche of both Hindus and Muslims. So there are problems coming out of that mental psyche also. And partition has created nothing but hatred toward Muslims. In the post-independence period, Muslims faced political downbeat in addition to the absence of shrewd and foresighted leadership who could lead them with a mission and vision. Various political parties used Muslims as a vote bank, lured them with piecemeal appeasements and left them in the lurch when they faced grave problems. All of this had an adverse effect on their economy, education and social status so badly. So far I was just explaining as in a way that it is generally, this is a usual style of narrating Muslim backwardness in India. However, I think analyzing it this way, though they are facts, would not help solve problems at any time soon. This is very important. Being a minority religious group or being a Muslim community is not the basic reason for backwardness and suffering. We generally always count our deficiencies, our problems, our difficulties, and we celebrate. Even the Sachar committee report was celebrated, not the actions were taken in its proper way. So it's not being a minority group or being a Muslim community is at the root of the problem. Neither is the existence of a hostile majority determined to never let Muslims progress. There is Christians only 2.3% of the population. 6, only 1.8% of the population in India excelled and progressed in almost all fields. And what some Muslim communities abroad have achieved amazing progress and development without surrendering their identity even under more hostile conditions. All of this prompts the need to reconsider the root causes of the problem as we have understood them as. Here I argue that the problem is with the Indian Muslims is their inefficiency to grapple with modernity or their lack of visionary insight on how to reconcile their religiosity with modernity and its ingredients like secularism, democracy and modern education. I don't say that you throw out your religiosity and embrace the modernity, but there is a way, there is a new researches are going on, new studies are going on different Muslim communities or other non-Muslim, other religious communities, which says that tradition is not against modernity. You cannot put tradition and modernity in opposite sides. There is a traditional modernity or there is a selective modernization. And Muslims need to read in that lines. This problem is not an exclusively Muslim phenomena. However, going through the perils of colonization and westernization in the last 2 centuries, it was the Muslim community across the world that that had to grapple the most with the question of how to reconcile modernity with tradition, how to be religious and modern simultaneously, how to embrace the education, the scientific education, the social sciences, the natural sciences being developed by the Western community or the modern societies. So here Indian Muslims were put to this dilemma when the British ended centuries-long Muslims' rule and started implementing Western forms of law, administration, education and development. When Macaulay implemented his new education concept in 1830s, Muslims were one of the most affected because until that time Persian was the elite language, it was the government language, and those who know the Persian language were at the power. And overnight, those people are becoming illiterates. They are becoming not that much elite people. They are becoming backward. And those who know English language become they have the share in the government. So at a time, the language of the ruling, the language of education, all over the world, especially in the colonized world, was changing. So we could not cope with the education. We saw many kind of responses that time. Muslims responded differently to the new challenges. The Deoband and Barelvi movements arose as revivalists, defending Islamic traditionalism and defining Islam through its historically evolved intellectual legacy, as they opposed all norms and values of the westernized modernity. The Ahle Hadith movement emerged with another response of revivalism that called for a strict return to the original Islamic sources. Then there was the Aligarh movement of Sir Sayyid Ahmad Khan, who advocated rationalist reinterpretation of Islam in the light of Western science and modern thoughts, whereas a fourth group found Islam guilty and embraced Western modernity in full swing. Amid this host of reactions, the community as a whole fell into confusion, and the absence of a luminary leadership that could foresightedly design and define the flow of Muslim life in India was evident. Rather than preparing this minority community to wage a creative, productive and tolerant life Amidst the diversity of people and values, Muslim groups and leaders in India mostly tried to assert their differences and exclusive nature. Leaving aside the basic and existential issues, Muslims wrote on emotional things and symbolic steps, and their public discourses always struck on non-fundamental theological disputes. The basis of this attitude and discourses is what I see at the root of the problem. Due to this partly imagined and partly enforced problem, Indian Muslims failed to work out an intellectual cohesiveness and broad senses. Indian Muslims desperately need such a grand vision on education, because almost all studies in the field has proved the correlation, as I told, between education and backwardness, and the power of education to empower any community and build their capacity for the better. This paper does not go into the detailed data on educational status of Indian Muslims. However, the starting point can be the bleak picture of a Saksar report painted on public education of Muslims and its substantiated argument that only 4% of Muslim students go to the madrasa, which is being accused as the root cause of backwardness. What Indian Muslims need is a comprehensive vision on education, and here I see the importance of Sayyid Nursi, who has wonderfully tried to teach Muslims on how should they treat education in general, what does it mean with religious or material education, and what is science education, how should we go along with it. Sayyid Nursi is, we are knowing that great personality. He is the wonder of the age, called wonder of the age, Badi-uz-Zaman. He was the great reformer who successfully saved the Islamic faith from the destructive secularism and positivistic philosophy imposed upon Muslims early 20th century. He was a great personality. You should read. I am not going into details about his personality. We used to know about Sayyid Qutb, we used to know about Maududi, we used to know about Muhammad Abdo Afghani, and all this kind of personalities whose focus more or less has been on the political side. But here we missed, in fact we missed Sayyid Nursi, whose ideologies, whose teachings is most suitable. Why we should take on this kind of personalities? Generally, we have a tradition that we hear into all kind of negative experiences. Repeatedly, we are always reminded about Babri Masjid, about Gujarat issues, about Palestine, Iraq, Afghanistan. All kind of negative issues, negative repeated bad experiences are repeatedly reproduced, are always we are hearing. But we are not hearing into the positive aspects, positive movements, positive prospects of the Muslim world. Around the world, a lot of people are working for the better future. And there, especially, you know, we have heard much call, a lot of calls who say that come, we can die for Islam. People always, when they hear this negative news, repeatedly bad experiences, and they call, oh, there is no any hope in the future, so come, we can die for Islam. Islam, in fact, especially in the teachings of Sayyid Nursi, it calls for those people, come on, we can live for Islam. We can live for Islam. He lived for 87 years. He never did any suicidal thing or self-destructive thing. He lived in exile, he lived in prisons, he lived in hiding 87 years, and he was in trouble always. But he waged a war of Manavi Jihad, as Professor Colin Turner was mentioning. He waged a Manavi Jihad, and the fruits of which is being experienced by people in Turkey, and they are taking that notion around the world. They are into a good situation where Sayyid Nursi, in fact, asked Muslims to think about not only education, all kind of things. And the basic thing was education, how to deal with materialism, how to deal with social, science education, how to deal with westernization. And the same people are in talk with about interfaith dialogue and all these kind of issues. So we should know what kind of educational theory he is making up. So Muslims, if we see into the educational aspects of the Muslims, we see there is a madrasa education, there is secular education, and there are hundreds of thousands of Muslim villages which don't have any access to any kind of educations. There are hundreds of villages with no schools in India. We know that fact. And there are some people who are fortunate enough to get secular education, and some students who are fortunate enough to get the madrasa education. But in fact, based on his teaching from the notions of Quran, what Sayyid Nursi teaches us is that Islamic perspective of education is a combined way of education. Muslims should have scholars and Muslims should have experts in all fields. So whatever field they select, science education, social science, natural sciences, or whatever kind of sciences, they should have a moral background. So at the preliminary level at least, everybody should get a moral teaching and a moral kind of education. They can grow with that. So it is not just simply learning the things, but it is practicing the things. And while practicing the religion, he can go to different areas of educational empowerment, into science education, into social sciences. So in this way, he is saying his new method was to combine the religious sciences with modern sciences. As a result, the positive sciences would strengthen the truths of religion. In this regard, one of Badi'uzzaman's greatest aims was to establish a university that he called Madrasatul Zahra, where students would be taught in both fields, positives and religious sciences. The reason behind this project was that he saw that in secular schools, only modern sciences were taught, while in Madaris of the East, only religious sciences were taught. So the former was in danger of being without religion, and the latter had to be protected from bigotry. Ustad Badi'uzzaman says these truthful lines in this matter: the religious sciences are the light of the consciences, and the modern sciences are the light of the reason. The truth is manifested through the combining of them. The student's endeavor will improve with these two things. When they are separated, it gives rise to bigotry in the first one and violence and skepticism in the other. Through the Madrasatul Zahra, Badi'uzzaman aimed at reconciling the three main branches of the educational system of that time, which was composed of the Madaris of traditional religious schools, where students taught too many detailed theoretical and instrumental learning. New secular schools where students were taught modern sciences with no reference to religion, and the Taqiyas or Dervishes lords, which focused on spirituality but neglected the first two. Here what Sayyid Nursi calls for is, for Muslim scholar, he should know the temporal world, the contemporary period. He should, Muslim community anyway, they need scholars. So scholars of Muslim community, from whatever background they are, from whatever differences they do have, keeping their differences, they can be scholars of the time, so they can guide the community. And at the same time, those who go for so-called secular or temporal or material, whatever we call it, education, they should also know, they should have the moral background, because there is a saying, the best, the one who can steal a kidney should be a good and expert doctor. So if he doesn't have the moral background, he will be going for any kind of bad deeds. So this is the idea of education he is giving, and for the Muslim community in India, we should work on that. One of the person who can give us a great philosophy, vision on education is, of course, Sayyid Nursi. So Muslims need to contribute. That is the thing. We always say that we are backward. So if we look in the last 2 centuries, what is our contribution to the world? From where? How the world community is benefiting from us? They are hearing all the bad news about Muslim community, right or wrong. But where are the contributions of the Muslim community? Internet, computer, whatever things we are utilizing, all the system we are utilizing right now, it is not our contribution. Maybe the basics, the Muslim community's contribution, but not. So the productivity, the contribution, it is needed, so that the science education is important. Why the science education is important? Because the Quran
repeatedly calls for tafakkur, to think about, and that is what Sayyid Nursi is talking about, education in that way, and Muslims in India need to utilize from his vision of education. May God bless us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you.